Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Latino Acceleration webcast. I'm really excited to be here. I know I missed last month, the Latinas Leading the Way webcast. Sorry for being a couple of minutes late. I guess I pressed the wrong button. And if you can, put where you're from in the chat, and then I'll open things up here. So to kick things off, I'm Refugio Ref Atilano. I am the author of the Latino Leadership Playbook, the creator of the Latino Leadership Development Club, as well as the creator of this Latino Acceleration webcast. Really excited to be here. Like I said, I'm also a senior leader for a world-class pharma company, AbbVie, although everything I'm doing today is on my own. So this is not sponsored by AbbVie, but I just have to put in that caveat. You know, I'm really excited about the Latino Acceleration webcast in general. We started these webcasts probably about September of last year, and we have some outstanding topics. We have some outstanding leaders. As you can see, we have some powerful leaders here, and Ozzy is going to be joining us in about another 10 minutes or so. But podcasts are really important, right? It's about their collective advancement of the entire Latino community. And I wanted to make sure we provide great speakers, great content, great topics, right? To help us in advancing our community, advancing your careers, advancing everything, right? That's what we're here for. I'm really especially excited about today's webcast around Latinos, the importance of Latinos in the boardroom. Super important. And, as we think about the makeup of this country from a population perspective, I was just telling the group here, across all underrepresented populations, we're about 38%. So this is the Latino, the Black, the Asian, right? So, and it's growing. And so who better to be in these board positions or in these senior leader positions than Latinos, then Blacks, and then Asians, right? So we know how to plug into the markets. We know the insights, and we could bring back those insights to help drive business. Everybody's talking about some really great data. Going to the Latino population, almost 20%, $3.7 trillion in buying power. So there is a ton of opportunity. Latinos bring a unique value, a unique way to connect with these communities, to bring value back to business, to help drive our business forward, right? But more than that, it's a way to advance your careers. It's a way to advance the senior leader development of our community, right? So there's so much robustness, there's so much benefit that can come from this. And that's why it's so critical that we have these conversations. As we go along in this discussion, you're going to hear some great insights. Again, I'll do the intros here with Marisol, Carlos, Marta, and Ozzy here shortly. But I can't be more excited than to unleash some great insights. And we're going to hit a bunch of different topics today, even within the realm of board level, because there's so much that goes underneath that. It's not just board, but it's how do you develop? How do you create that mindset to get to boards? How do you develop your capabilities, even if you're at a junior level, to connect those dots and build yourself up towards being board ready and knowing what that involves. So with that, I couldn't be more excited about today. I'm really happy. And then with that, the way that today's going to flow is I'll do some quick intros with the team here. We'll do about 2 or 3 minutes per person. We'll get into the actual deep questions, and I'll cap things off as we wrap up. So with that, Marisol, I'll go to you. Tell us about yourself, what excites you about boards, and why you're here today.
Thank you, Refugio, and everybody. It's an honor to be here. Thank you for inviting me for this podcast. I am an independent board director. I've been in board service for about 10 years or so. And I've been in public companies, private companies, and also nonprofits. I do now. And the reason why I was interested in boards was that early in my career, I was very much exposed to what the board did. So it was kind of an education, as you said, Refugio. I was aware of what it was, and I had to prepare some presentations for the board. So I was aware of this space. As I continued to grow in different roles of responsibility, when I was in executive level at Coca-Cola, I had the opportunity to serve on a private company board. It was a family business. And I loved the experience. So ever since, and that was way back in 10 years ago. So then I started looking into board service as a potential way for me to start my second career. So I resigned from my full-time job, let's say, and I started looking into board service, and I do that full time now, and it's a full time job.
Oh, wow. And just
We're sharing that with everybody.
I love that. And Marisol, just to go back, what and I apologize if I missed it specifically, but what is that moment, or who's that person, or what was that experience that actually got you excited about getting into boards?
The very first board was an acquisition that I did with the team in Brazil, and they needed an operating board member. So it wasn't even on the independent directors; it was an operating board member. And so I was part of the marketing team, and I had that assignment for 3 years. So I learned a ton in that assignment. So, when you're thrown in there to do a particular role, you start learning. You learn the good, the bad, and the ugly, and you learn how to put structure in what you do. And so after studying all of that, then I decided that I liked that, the nature of board service, the strategic nature of it. And I started exploring more and more, and then I just researched it. And then that's how I decided that I wanted to get into governance for my future. So
Thank you for sharing. I love that. I just like to hear and see that journey so others can feel that as well. All right. With that, Marta, I'll go to you. Quick intro. Yeah. Tell us about yourself.
This is going to sound very similar. I come from big blue chip corporate America, Boeing, Westinghouse, Johnson Controls, and Medtronic. And through that experience, I had something similar. I worked with the board, had to present to the board, had to present business offers at Boeing because I started my career in sales. So you have to put together the package, the offer to the airline, and present it to the board. I kind of think back then they took a little sport in making fun of that, but it taught me how to be a really great communicator. So I learned very quickly, at a very young age, how to present material that would really resonate to them. And I started to think over the years, that's a really interesting job, being a board director. Now, that role has changed substantially, even in the last 5 years. But I started out in 2012 joining a mayor-appointed position as Economic Development Council in the city of Long Beach and in Boulder, Colorado. And that was a really great entry into the board world. And then I served on a private company board in photovoltaics, and that was a lot of fun, being as part of a smaller company and being a part of their board. And then more recently, I'm now on a publicly traded board and then a large not-for-profit. It's a membership organization. And so I'm on both of those. And the thing that was the impetus, you talked about what was it that made you think that you could do that? What was it that made you think that this was for you? I wanted to do it because I felt like boards were not getting enough information. And I felt like they weren't asking, not necessarily the right questions, they were right for them, but they could be more curious and get to the heart of what's really going on. And so that's why I wanted to be on a board.
I love that. Just bring that unique value, like you always talk about. That's perfect. Quick question. I want to go back to, you mentioned early on, you were in sales and you had to prep for board meetings and you developed your communication capability. Talk to us a little bit about how you developed your communication skills, especially for the younger crowd here. Like just a couple of steps on how you created how you developed that capability.
I started watching people that got promoted and how did they communicate and what were they really good at? And you know what they're really good at? They're really good at giving corporate presentations, and they're good at convincing customers why they should partner with you. And so I watched that. And then the flip side of that was I thought about what are people saying that resonates with me and how are they saying it? If you do that and you think about what people are saying and you think about what really matters to you, you can weed out really quickly the things that do and the things that don't. And it really sharpens your skills.
Love that. Yeah. And so for all the people, work on your communication, sharpen those skills, do your research, practice, right? All that good stuff, because that leads to all types of opportunities, not just boards, but all types of great exposure and opportunities for your career. All right. Welcome, Ozzy. I'll get to you in 1 second. We'll go to Carlos and then Ozzy for introductions. Carlos.
Thank you for doing this. This is great. Carlos Sorda, President and CEO of the Latino Coalition here in DC, Washington, DC. I first got my, I'm going to talk really more about nonprofit boards. I've served in over 20 of them, from Miami to DC to Los Angeles to Arkansas, if you can believe that. I was the first Latino in the Arkansas Business Chamber, same thing in Missouri. They never had a Latino on their board 20-something years ago. So that was interesting. But I started my journey on nonprofit boards through a presentation. The United Way in Miami asked me to do a presentation to their government affairs committee. And I did that for a couple of years, and they asked me to get more involved. And I met some people there. And then one of them, when I was, I think, 26, asked me to serve on my first nonprofit board called Kids Voting, which is an amazing organization, it's still around. And it teaches kids, young kids, the importance of voting. And because I was doing very political work, it made sense to me. And so from that opportunity, opportunities came along, and it's amazing when you join for me, a nonprofit board. You get to meet people from different walks of life, different levels, right? You're all working towards a really great mission. You're helping that organization become better. And you're doing that because you bring something to that board that they needed, and similar to obviously a for-profit board. But for the folks that are the younger set that are watching, I think it's really important as you move up the corporate ladder or the business world, you really need to get involved. Start with a nonprofit, or start with a commission, government commission. Get involved in the community. You're going to meet so many people that you normally wouldn't be able to meet, and those people will help you along the way. So that, to me, it's exciting to be able to give back to organizations that really are making a difference.
Yeah, thank you, Carlos. And just to go, and Carlos, one more question on that, especially on your strategic network development, just to go a little bit deeper on that. For you personally, with some of your board positions, what's one experience where it really expanded your network in a meaningful way?
Well, I mean, when I got to Missouri in 2001, I really didn't know anybody. And so the company at the time was Ford Motor Company. They had a quote unquote a seat on the Missouri Chamber of Commerce board. They had a seat in the Arkansas Chamber of Commerce board. Those are some of the states that I was responsible for in my region. And so it was a really quick way to get to know people in those states in the business sector, right? Because I'm the outside person. I'm coming from Detroit, Michigan to Kansas City, Missouri, but yet I'm responsible for Missouri. And so I needed to connect with those people, the business folks, because they were very helpful with their business agenda in front of the legislature, right? And so chambers of commerce tend to do that. I mean, it connects you in a very quick way. You get to meet very influential people who can be helpful to you. You can be helpful to them. And it really does expand your horizon. I mean, being on the state board, we went all over the state of Missouri. There were places that I never probably would have been able to go to if it wasn't for that board service. Same thing with the Arkansas Chamber or the Texas Chamber. I mean, wherever you are, it'll expose you to different people, different walks of life, whether it's a corporate person, a business person, an entrepreneur. So you're constantly expanding your network. And with that, I think you expand your knowledge. You learn something all the time.
Yeah, and it sounds like you expand your access as well, which is phenomenal.
Access equals success.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Carlos. Ozzy, thanks for joining. We're doing intros, and we have you last up here. Tell us about yourself and just a little bit about why you're passionate about boards and about being here today.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you your patience and me being able to make it to the webinar. First of all, gracias refugio, and it's always an honor to be here with Marisol, Carlos, and Marta. I know them personally, and always learn so much from what they have to say. So my journey has been different, non-traditional, I would say. I'm a librarian by trade, made his way into executive search, talent intelligence, and just learned a lot about how to access talent and how to make it accessible and visible. And through my journey, I took some lefts and rights. I was an entrepreneur for about 5 years, and then got my calling back into the work that I'm doing today in terms of executive search and board recruiting. And LCBA opened their doors for me, and was a really a pivotal point in my career of really being able to connect with leaders like Marta, Marisol, and Carlos. And Carlos is, the reason why I'm here with the work that he did with ACER and creating the LCDA. But, our work is pivotal. We are here to ensure that we provide access to an exceptional group of leaders that are making impact in corporate boards as well in the C-suite. And I've learned a lot about their journey and as well have taken that very personally to navigate my world into not-for-profit as Carlos. And today I serve on 2 not-for-profits. And exactly what Carlos has said, it has allowed me to really think more broadly about the work that I'm doing and also be able to really understand the importance of governance and what members like Marta and Marisol are dealing with day in and day out. Not to say it compares to what for-profit and large private boards have to deal with, but there's a lot of learnings that I've been able to really bring into my day-to-day that have allowed me to be better at the work that I do, but as well has allowed me to expand my network in areas that I'm very passionate about. So I have the opportunity to be on a board called Invest Ahead that focuses on transparency and disclosure on corporate boards and works specifically with institutional investors and proxy advisors. Very, very important elements in the world of board. And as well, I also am on the board of the Association of LGBTQ Corporate Directors, which has a very similar mission as LCDA, Latino Corporate Directors Association. So very passionate about just making the invisible visible and making them accessible. So look forward to sharing more.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do have one question. I think this will resonate with a lot of our, especially our younger generation too, is I like the way you put your career. You took a bunch of lefts and rights and you kind of navigated your way here. Tell us a little bit about kind of your persistence and your grit and how you navigated your career. Just give us a little glimpse into that of how you just kept going forward, right? And hitting your with your North Star in mind and ending up where you did. Tell us a little bit about that journey.
I don't think I had a North Star. I just learned along the way how important mentors and sponsors were along the way. I really felt it. And I didn't choose my mentors. We just kind of found ourselves. But I realized what the importance is and how to leverage them, right? You can't just have one call. You have to nourish those relationships. And that's what happened. I've always found my next job, my next role by my network. And I've surrounded myself with individuals that I learned a lot from, and also have moved away from individuals that maybe are not, good for me and my health and my career. It's just a way that I see life. That I see a good in people, and I also try to take the most out of the situation. Something that everyone has said: just say yes. Say yes to the opportunity, and that's what I've led with. And I also have led with that I don't have to do this alone. That I can lean on my mentors for guidance and support in the next decision I need to make. So, it's been surrounded by really, really great people, and that has allowed me to really adventure out of what I think my North Star is, which it's not what I thought it would be. Definitely, it's not being the president and CEO of Latino Corporate Directors Association, but I'm here and I've enjoyed every minute of it.
Awesome. No, thank you for sharing your journey. All right, let's get into the questions. And Marta, to kick us off, just kind of level, I know we've been speaking around boards and everything, but just to, level set the entire audience, what is a board and what purpose does it serve? If you can go a little bit deeper on that.
Okay, yeah, no problem. So boards are really a governing body. So they're a governing body that's responsible for oversight and strategic directions. And we ensure that the company acts in the best interest of the shareholders. So I'm talking about publicly traded boards now and their stakeholders. So it's not just about the shareholders, but you've got a broader set of stakeholders that you've got to think about as well. And shareholders on publicly traded boards typically elect the board members. A corporate board is responsible for strategic planning, executive oversight, financial stewardship, risk management, and overall governance. So that's a mouthful there. And it is a lot because over the last 5 years, the role of boards has changed dramatically. If you think about in 2020 versus today, you've got a very different operating environment that boards are operating in because their companies and their organizations are operating in a very different environment. So that has meant that our governance has had to change. It's had to evolve. And we operate independent of the day-to-day management operations. So we are oversight over that. and we make a lot of decisions that help the day-to-day management think about, you mentioned it earlier, North Star. What is the strategic direction of the company? What are we going to do with M&A? What are we going to do with the budget? Where are we going to invest? Things like that are what boards talk about in all of their meetings. And we also spend a lot of time thinking about succession planning. Ozzy was talking earlier about recruiting. That's a big thing for boards, is to really understand who's in the green room and who are the next 3 top CEOs that we're looking at, as well as the executive team. So we go over that actually quite frequently and think about that. And we also make sure that the boards operate with not only fiduciary focus, but in terms of compliance, that they're ethical and legal. And so a big job description, right? There's a lot to think about in terms of what boards do. But like I said, if you think about 2020 versus today, that evolution is really quite profound in terms of what boards, how much time they spend, and how much you need to know in terms of getting on a board and being a good governor once you're on the board. And I mention that because a lot of people that are listening may have a view of boards like they were a few years ago. Think about it, 5 years wasn't that long ago. Within that time frame, AI came to the forefront. It was around a lot longer, but now you've got AI, you've got a new administration, you've got global alliances that are happening today that weren't even heard of 2, 3, 4 years ago. So all of these dynamics combined have made boards evolve their governance. But the key 7 areas that I listed, those haven't changed. They've just gotten deeper.
Love it. Thank you. You did all phenomenal insights. Thank you for setting the stage. Ozzy, I'm going to go to you. And you talked about recruitment with LCDA. Talk to me about some of the capabilities you help prospective board members develop. And so 2 questions, that, and then what would you tell a young Latino who wants to think about boards in their future? What would you tell that person as they think about boards and develop towards being a board member?
So those are 2 great questions. On the first piece, we have the honor to work with a lot of exceptional leaders that have built extremely marketable careers. And that's actually the first and foremost area that anyone needs to focus on, is building a marketable career that makes you valuable for boards, right? That's the hardest part. I think after that, it's still very challenging in terms of how you navigate the board journey, because it's a lot of patience, it's a lot of no's, and sometimes you don't have enough information to realize, why did I get a no? How do I get better? And we're working with extremely successful individuals that want to know the feedback so they can correct. So when they get ready for the next board interview, they're ready to go. So at LCDA, we work on really just understanding how the board journey works and the various players that are around it: search firms, private equity, venture capital, directors themselves. And one of the things that we learned first and foremost is that board culture is extremely important at the end of the day. And what that means is that you can have the most perfect resume, be the most perfect person on paper, but once you start the journey of interviewing, you really have to understand that at the end of the day, a lot of the dynamics are super important, the soft skills. So we try to really reiterate that those soft skills are incredibly important. How you ask a question, how you come across in an interview, are you filling the room with hot air? Those conversations aren't talked about quite a bit. It's a lot of the technical, work. The other piece of it is that you don't have to do this work alone. As you go through the board journey, there's all these resources available to you. LCDA is one of them. So as you navigate the process, know that we can support you from research, understanding who you're meeting with. And our goal is to really make sure that the member or the person interviewing for the board has as much information to connect the dots. Connect the dots can be, we went to the same college as the chair. There's a gap within the skill set, really trying to figure out how they can increase their value in this board recruitment process. Those are kind of the soft pieces of it. The other is just giving them enough information to be powerful and in the world of governance. What does governance mean? What is the role of director? the art of asking a good question. Those other kind of more technical elements really help out an individual understand what they're getting themselves into. And Marta says it right. I mean, the role of the director has changed and evolved quite rapidly, even in the last 5 years. But we want to make sure that we send individuals into boards that understand that pressure, understand that this is not just 4 meetings a year. This is a lot of work and energy that's taken to really be a good director. And being from our community, Latinos, there's also additional pressures, right? That our members think about, how do I come across as a Latino? Do I come across as a Latino? And our goal is to just make sure that they're prepared to say, first and foremost, you're being seen as for your governance capabilities. Make sure you shine, make sure you understand the board dynamic. And that really is going to help you kind of learn the system or understand the board culture. So our goal really is to make sure that our members have those resources and tools and knowledge that may not be commonly talked about in a safe space.
Yeah, that's great. I love the setup, and please, audience, look up LCDA. If you're getting board ready, please make that connection with Ozzy and his team. Take advantage of those great resources.
And if we very briefly on the second question, it's not too early to start understanding what governance means, but I think you have to set expectations. Not-for-profits is a great way to understand that. There's local, there's national. There's a lot of work that you need to do personally to understand that this is the world you want to get into. So, and many organizations that we're involved in do allow us to have that opportunity. But like Carlos, how he navigated into not-for-profit. I think first and foremost, anyone that's interested in governance needs to have that level of understanding. So any individual that's thinking about board service, Marisol and Marta have such great backgrounds. You can look at their LinkedIn profile and see how they've navigated corporate America. To ask yourself, do I have that caliber of background? In the same time, learn about governance in places where you're going to create direct impact. So not-for-profits are great places.
Awesome. Thank you. Great insights. All right. We're going to switch gears here. And Carlos, I'm going to go to you before I go to Marisol. Tell us why Latinos need to consider being on a board, and what are some of the benefits and mutual benefits in doing so for Latinos specifically.
Yeah, sure. So if you're thinking about your career, right, and you want to move up the ranks, everybody does. You want to go from a manager, director to VP, SVP, all of that, right? Every place you go, you're going to be different, right? There's a book called "What Got You Here Won't Get You There." It's a great book if none of you have read it. Because you have to reinvent yourself all the time. So what a board allows you to do is to learn some of these soft skills that Ozzy was talking about, right? As a nonprofit, or whether it's a commission, you're going to be dealing with other folks that some have been 20 years on nonprofit boards. They know what they can teach you, right? Marta, she said to me something super key: watch people, watch how people behave, watch the interaction between the chair and the staff, right? And so you can learn a lot of this stuff that you can use once you get to your corporate board. But it really starts with, I think, a nonprofit and understanding the bylaws and understanding governance, what makes that organization run and tick. Look, the IRS, as of 2023, there are 2 million nonprofits in the United States. The average age is about 50 to be a member, okay? Only 20% are 40 and younger. You serve for almost 15 years. Very different stats than for a profit board, right? Those are much shorter time frames. Sometimes there's retirement ages. So really get involved. You're gonna develop leadership skills that you may not get at work. You won't get at work, right? And if you look at your CEO, if you look at the top executives in your company, most of them are also on nonprofit boards, right? That's part of giving back to the community. As a great corporation, those executives will be on nonprofit boards with other nonprofits. So your network will expand. Sometimes we tend to stay with our own Latinos, and which is a wonderful thing. But we're only 20%. There's 80% out there that we really have to engage with and get to know. And because they're also looking for opportunities for others. And so I would say really just expand that network. Know your stuff, and have a track record. Like Ozzy said, you're not gonna jump on a Fortune 100 board your first time, and I'm sure you see people going from a Fortune 500 to a 250 to then 100 and then a 50, it's kind of the way it works. It's almost like your career is, if you want to go down that route, if you want to be on a corporate board, you have your work career, but you have your board career. And again, start at the nonprofits. A lot of states, the governor appoints people to the university system, the public university system. So look for those kind of appointments. Look for major nonprofits, billion-dollar nonprofits, right? You may be the only Latino in that nonprofit or Latina there. Your network will expand beyond. Incredible. For the first group of Latinos that got to corporate boards, they either did it through government service or major nonprofit boards. That's where they met CEOs and other people that could influence their path to that boardroom. So if you're thinking about getting a career in corporate, you really, really should engage at the local level. Your company supports a lot of nonprofits through their philanthropic giving. Ask whoever's in charge of that. Can I sit on that board? I mean, you have to ask. You got to take the initiative.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that, Carlos. You said a lot. There's a lot of great gems there, and I like the walk. Right, it's just you have to build your way up to some of the areas that this team has built their way up to. So this is great stuff. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Marisol, same question to you. You know, what is your perspective on why Latinos should be on boards, and what's kind of the mutual benefit for doing that?
Yeah, and I think what Carlos mentioned, it's rightly so. It's kind of what's the benefit for the Latino. I tend to think about the same terms. What's in it for the Latino, the person? What's in it for the company? What's in it even for society? Mm-hmm. So from the personal level, everything that Carlos mentioned is right on. I think there's an additional benefit, which is building self-confidence out of all of those experiences that he mentions. When you have a bigger network, when you expand your network and you meet new people and you hear the way they do things, they learn a skill. They're building that muscle to really be more creative in solving issues or working together with teams. All of that is an arsenal of skills that you're building as you sit on different boards. So that's one. And building that self-confidence will allow you to also be more assertive at asking the right things for you. So when you said at the very end, Carlos, you have to take the initiative. Sometimes we don't take the initiative because we don't have that self-confidence. When you get on a board, if it's a nonprofit or a for-profit, it doesn't matter, then you build, slowly but surely, you build that self-confidence that will allow you to really look after yourself, ask for what's right for you. As Ozzy said, ask for mentors to what else can a board position give you in terms of that growth and that development. If I think in terms of the company, then the benefit for the company is huge as well. Having Latino on their board, it's a way to bring a different perspective that the same race or gender or the same makeup of a board will not bring otherwise. So bringing that diversity of thought into the boardroom because a Latino comes in really makes a difference also for the company. They will be thinking about different issues that they might see or opportunities that they need to go after in a very different way. So that's a benefit that the company will have as well.
Yeah. Okay.
And I was going to say, this is by having a Latino in the boardroom. Really, the power of three is a concept that also for minorities, you need to have that voice grow. And there's a lot of research and a lot of data that indicates that if there's three people on that board, 3 Latinos or 3 Asians or African American, it doesn't matter. We're talking about diversity. Then it really start making an impact. So that's kind of a benefit for the company as well, being able to have a voice being represented in the boardroom. And for society, having Latinos being on board sets a great role model for future generations that are coming behind. There should be no reason why, having Latinos being board members is almost like a certification for other Latinos that we can aspire to a better life. We can aspire to be in positions and roles of higher responsibility because we're proving that we can do that, and we can do that very well, as a matter of fact. So it's great benefits for Latinos being on board.
Love it. Thank you. Yeah, there's a lot in there, a lot of great gems. Thank you very much for sharing it with the audience. Let's keep us moving. I think we have a little bit over 20 minutes left. I want to hit some more questions here. And just briefly, I think you've all talked a little bit briefly about your journeys, but anything you want to add as far as, telling us about your, I'll start with Martha here. Can you tell us about your journey towards understanding the importance of being on a board? I know you talked a little bit about that, but anything else you want to add on what was it important to you, especially earlier in your journey?
Yeah, because, I talked earlier about the questions, the type of questions, and boards really getting to the heart of what the material they're being presented with. How can they make decisions based on some material, but not the whole picture? They don't have time. You've only got so much time on the agenda, so you got to think about that. One of the things that really struck me was the boards that I had access to, how I could see they were really adding value. It wasn't about just speaking up. The 8 people in the room, they're not competing for airtime. They're adding value where it makes sense. And this is really important because, especially on publicly traded boards, we have a series of reviews that we do with each other, we do with the chair, and we do with the CEO. And so you really need to, and Marisol talked a lot about this, you need to be that collaborative person on the board that's bringing your experience, that's informing the decision, but in a way that adds value. I can't overstate that enough, because that is the one thing that will really be additive to the board or be subtractive to the board. And when we talk about Latinos on boards, this one is really important. You were talking about the size and the scope of our demographic, just in the United States alone. That's massive. So as boards, we want to govern for the future. We're governing for today, but for the future. And the future is Latino. And we have to think about that in terms of who we're bringing onto the boards and their point of view. And how does that relate to our customers and our other stakeholders who also likely have a big representation of Latinos? And so all those things combined are really additive to not only good governance, but how we need to think about boards and the future of boards and the future of just our demographic and what that means to companies.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. Yeah, it sounds like there's a huge, well, that sounds like there is a huge opportunity for us being on boards and adding value for, especially, future-proofing companies and tying into these, the Latino community as well as other communities. It's a really big opportunity. So thank you. Carlos, same question to you. Tell us about your journey understanding the importance of being on a board.
Yeah, so I've learned a lot of things from being on a board. My career, my background is in politics, then corporate America, and now nonprofits. And, nobody's an expert at everything, right? So on a board, I've learned finances, right? Wasn't very good at them when I first started, but I joined, the audit committee, and I started to learn about audits and the importance that has to an organization. A nonprofit is a public organization. You follow your 990s. Everybody can look at what you're working on basically every year. So I learned about strategy, right? Even as a nonprofit, how do you grow? Where do you want to go as a nonprofit? How do you get more customers through that door? There's strategy to that. I learned about PR, about comms. I learned about governance, right? How does somebody get on a board? Well, you go back to the bylaws. And by the way, the bylaw says that you can have from 3 to maybe 10 board members. Well, if we need more, you've got to change the bylaws. Well, there's a whole other process for that, right? So I'm learning things that I didn't get in my work experience when I was lobbying, the states. But all of that I learned applied to my work as well, right? And so I was able to learn a lot of things. It's almost like going to school constantly. You're constantly learning new things. And then you get, you go from, a small nonprofit to a more larger nonprofit to larger, more issues, more challenges, right? But now, Marisol said you had the confidence, you've dealt with it at the smaller level, you continue to use that. So it's just, if you like to learn, I would say, again, boards in general, but a nonprofit board, you really get to delve in, and because it's small and collegial, you can work with different people, many assignments, many things. You can bring experts in to talk to you. And so I always encourage the young folks, and you could determine what young is. It's never too late to start. If the average age is 50 on a nonprofit board, okay, well, that'll be the young set, right? You really just, it's amazing what you can learn on those nonprofit boards. And you're doing something good for society. You're giving back in a way that allows your personal talents to give back. And I think, all of us want to do that somehow, some way. I would tell you, at least for nonprofit boards and probably for corporate boards as well, be passionate about the board that you're on. Really, you're going to have to love whatever it is that you do, whatever board you choose. Be very passionate about it, because you're going to spend a lot of time on it. And the more passionate you are, the better you're going to get at it. The more excited you're going to be to go to those board meetings and solve the problems. If you get on a board just to get on a board, you're probably not going to be successful. That's what I've learned.
If you don't mind, Carlos, one more thing that you mentioned is not only the type of industry, but also the people around the table. Because once you're in, you might get stuck for a couple of years. Some interesting dynamics, which I know is a harder piece to assess, but I just wanted to add that because that's 100%.
Great point.
Yeah, being selective and making sure you do your due diligence on your side of the house. Carlos, I'm going to go just double click on one thing, just really a quick response. But tell us about the importance, especially for our younger community, about being a lifelong learner and the importance of that throughout your career.
Well, you have to be, because as you're going from a manager to a director to a VP, you're constantly learning. You're getting more and more responsibility, right? People are looking at you. When I first got a big promotion to Ford, my boss said to me, I was, I think, 34. He said to me, from now on, what we're looking at is your judgment. We know you're smart. You've got the skills. You know politics. You know all of that. But it's your judgment. We're going to send you out to Kansas City, Missouri. You're going to be responsible for 11 states, 11 governors, 11 House and Senate. You have to make some really fast judgments, right, on things for the business. And so I had to think very differently now than I did as a manager. When I became a vice president at Carnival, I thought very differently. Okay, it really was much more tied into the business. Everything was much more tied into the business. We had a CEO that was very business focused. So, you have to change. If you don't change, you don't grow. And that's the reality. And again, whether it's your work or your board service or your community engagement, it should constantly feed you as a human being for you to be able to grow and learn. You meet other people. When you travel abroad, I always learn when I travel abroad. Go to new places, right? Same thing here. It feeds your soul in a way that is really great. And if you don't want to grow, that's okay, I guess. But I wouldn't do it that way.
Thank you, Carlos. I appreciate it. And Marisol, same question to you. Tell us about your journey towards understanding the importance of being on the board.
In my journey, I think it was kind of an evolution. My very first board, I remember that I was so nervous about the meeting. And so it was very short-sighted. I was worried about the meeting, if I was going to make a contribution, reading the materials. It was almost like very, very short-term and focused. Then I suddenly shifted gears to the year. So it was like, the horizon was bigger. It was not only the meeting and what was going on that particular quarter. In public companies, sometimes, there's a cadence of things that are dealt with in every single quarter. But also it was like everything that's happening in the year. So the horizon was kind of growing. If I look at it now, after years being on board governance, I am able, and that's a muscle that you grow by being on boards. I'm able to look at the operational issues that, the management or the CEO of whatever company I serve on is dealing with in the short term. But at the same time, I'm already paying attention to the future, to the strategic direction that we are making with every decision, every advice that we give to management has an implication to the strategic direction of that business. And I'm thinking not about the profits, but I'm thinking all of these thousands of employees on the companies that we serve, if we make some bad decision or if we advise wrongly, we're impacting the lives, the livelihoods of all of these families of employees. So I'm already thinking on stakeholders. So it's been a very enriching evolution to think that you're coming to this board career and you look at it short term, but then suddenly you realize, oh my goodness, this is really something that is for the future. Our core role is to ensure that that company continues to sustain, to be sustainable over time because of all of the implications to all of the stakeholders, the shareholders, the employees, the customers. They all, it's an interrelated ecosystem.
Yeah.
Every single company, whatever, how many companies are there. So therefore, the responsibility is huge. The board role is very important, and that's something to reflect on. The responsibility of being on the board of whatever company. If you think about the impact that we have on all of those stakeholders. So it's been great. It's been very enriching, by the way.
Love it. And one of the things that popped out to me in your explanation was your perspective, how it widened, right? So it really widened kind of this way, that future way, just the whole ecosystem, like you said. If you had to tell a younger person in their career how to widen your perspective, whatever role they're in, more on the junior side of things, what piece of advice would you give some of those folks to widen their perspective?
I think it will be connect outwards. I think that we tend to connect to the circles that are immediate to what we operate in whatever field there is. And I think connecting to different set of people. And I think, as Carlos mentioned, if you are active in your community, you're working for X company in X industry and segment, and suddenly, you have an expanded network in the commission of your community, in the office of the mayor of that county. And you start meeting people and you start looking how everything is interconnected anyway. And with that, then you open up your perspective, because as we learn, everything we learn travels to the immediate situation that you're dealing with. So if I'm dealing with a situation today, my mind is going to go reach out the various experiences I've had. It's going to reach out to the various network people that I met. So therefore, connecting outwards gets you all of these network out there that when you're forced to make a decision, whether you consciously do it or not, you're going to reach out to all that learning. So that would be the advice. Connect outwards.
Love
Could
it.
I jump in here for a second? Because
Please.
you're making some excellent points that I think not only relate to really good leadership, but board governance as well. And I think there's different levels of expertise and how you perform on a board that really matters. So you have sort of expert thinking. What do you bring to the table that's unique, that no one else at the table has, that's going to inform decisions? And then if you think about critical thinking and strategic thinking, and what Marisol is talking about is really that systems thinking. It's really the hallmark of bringing it all together and connecting all of the dots and being able to solve problems very readily with a limited amount of information. And that's something that boards really look for. That's something that it's not, you don't think about that in terms of when you read the board job description or the position description. You don't think about that. That's something that boards not only value today because of the interconnectedness of everything we do. And if we're governing for the future, not just today, but if we're governing for the future, we've got to have that wide lens. Our aperture has got to be wide open so that we can view all of these things. So if I were to summarize that real quickly, it would be about that systems thinking and connecting the dots. Because if you can connect the dots, then on top of strategic thinking, critical thinking, and all those other skills, this is something new. It's not going to be in the future what you know, but it's going to be your ability to synthesize. And that's something that's a real critical skill, I think, for boards right now.
And Marta, we talk about this, that the enterprise-wide mindset.
That's right, yeah.
It's hard to kind of grasp in some perspectives and the roles that individuals have. But I think there is, it's a key asset, as we talked about, to have as you prepare for this journey. It doesn't matter actually at what level you are. It's understanding the role that you do, how it impacts not just your day-to-day, but the bigger, picture. And as you get higher in the totem pole and your seniority within an organization, that's even more important. So that allows you to really be able to connect the dots. Doesn't matter if you're a CISO, a CIO, a CTO, a CMO, that's a really strong skill set that many can hone early on in their career. Right?
Understand how the actions and decisions you make, even as a manager, affect everybody around you, whoever reports to you, who you report to, everybody within your sphere, your ecosystem. It's really important.
Yeah, absolutely. And Ozzy, I know we had you next. I know you chimed in, but anything else you want to add? And I know as far as from your perspective, what's the importance about your journey and understanding the importance of being on the board. Tell us a little bit about that, and also you mentioned the enterprise-wide kind of impact. How about industry-wide as well? Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I think the first part is first and foremost, know that being a director, doesn't matter if you're not-for-profit or in a public or large private board, it's not easy. It's not an easy task. Roles are still limited unless, the Carlos data point that he shared, there's quite a lot of non-for-profits that I wasn't aware of, but, the funnel gets more limited, right? And we want to ensure that the best of the best are managing our value, what we invest in these corporations. So we talk about the journey to the boardroom in a way that sometimes it makes it, easy, but there's a lot of work behind it, a lot of patience, a lot of, misses, a lot of wins, or a lot of more misses than wins. And I think that's something that we all have to just, think about in any point of our career of, as we go through this journey. But it's super important for anyone listening to know that there is a possibility of what else is out there. That is one of the challenges that we've had, is just people are not aware that there is this next chapter, as some may call it, in terms of governance impact. The not-for-profit experience, I think, is a little bit more, you can get earlier in your career, but I think the latter, the public and private boards, it's a journey. It's a really long journey. And I've been along Marisol and Martha's journey, and I know there's been ups and downs, and they probably have some more rooms to share about it. But they're incredible leaders that I have learned a lot about, and I know their boards are have great impact. So that's just one thing I want to share in terms of the board journey. The other is to know that you have to have an assessment of where your impact is, right? And where you potentially would create value. So as Carlos mentioned, you may not start off as a Fortune 500 or Russell 3000 director. You might have to start at a lower starting point, but having that expectation is important. And the best way to do that is having individuals in your own network give you that feedback, right? And you ask them, I'm thinking about A, B, and C. And you'll know that you have good leaders around your good people when they say, you know what, maybe not yet, or yeah, you're ready. And that's actually one of the tests that we have here when we talk to our members. And when we know someone's connected to another person, we might ask them like, hey, are they ready? And people know. So lean on those mentors, lean on your network to get a good assessment of where you are today, where you want to be, and figure out how to get there. So the journey is, I don't have the same board journey as these individuals. Mine is at the very beginning of it. Who knows where I will go next in terms of that journey, board journey impact. But I'm learning quite a bit of how to be a better CEO in my company when I'm on these not-for-profit boards, serving on those as a director. I now see both sides, and I think that has made me a better leader for LCDA and for our members, having that 2 point of views. So just give you a context of how I feel about it, but I am always in awe of these leaders, because it's not easy to be a corporate director at this time. I don't know what keeps you up at night. I know what keeps me up at night, but I don't know what, if it's tariffs or it's whatever it is, right? But it is a hard gig, a really hard gig.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Ozzy. Thank you for sharing. I know we're coming up against the hour, but let's go, if it's okay, let's go another 10 minutes. I'll see if I can get us wrapped up here. I'm going to move us on. Marta, I'm going to go back to you. What are some of the key strengths of our community? What are those things we should think about bringing forward, as we apply and get involved with boards?
I think about grit. I think about work ethic. I think about striving to get ahead and be good role models for our community. And I also think about our ability to connect people. If you think about the people you know in the Latino community that are connectors, you could come up with a list of 100 names. I don't know if it's in our DNA or how it comes about. It's in our blood. My cousin says it's in our blood. That's just something that we do. Those are qualities that every board needs. Hardworking, resilient, dealing with ambiguity, not knowing what is out there and having all the information. These are things that boards have to deal with, and these are qualities I believe in. They're really strong in our community and with a lot of people within our community. As Ozzy said, this is not an easy journey. It's not for the faint of heart, and it's definitely not a sprint. It's a marathon. And so all of those things, all of those qualities, not only make you a good board member, but they help you have patience as you're going on that journey. It's not that vertical line that goes straight up. It's not that, or what is it, linear line either. Right. It's going to be bumpy. It's going to have twists and turns. It's going to have all of those things. But if you stick to your values and also choose boards that are aligned with your values, we talk about that with Generation Alpha. What is it that you really value? Or Generation Z. I'm getting too young there, right? Alpha's not ready yet. But Generation Z, and my daughter's a Generation Z. And what matters to her is the company that she works with is aligned with her values. We talk about that in the same route to the boardroom. Because I was looking at a couple of publicly traded boards, and the one I chose was way more aligned with my values, and it made perfect sense. So when we talk about all of the hard work that Ozzy mentioned, you got to make sure that you want to do that. Now, we as Latinos are not new to hard work. And so all of these attributes, hard work, grit, resiliency, determination, that's what boards want, because they know that you're battle tested and that you can survive in the boardroom and you're going to add value. And I know I keep repeating myself, but if you don't add value in the boardroom, it's just not going to be a good place for you. So you got to do that.
Yeah, I love that. Two things that resonated is taking advantage of our natural cultural strengths and adding that value, finding those unique ways to add value. And kind of going back to Ozzy's point, you don't have to do it alone, right? You could use your trusted advisor to find to pressure test and find ways how to do that, and making sure that you're hitting the mark.
And we have to be honest with each other. We have to be honest with each other, whether or not we're board ready or not, or what boards we should go after. Because I hear a lot of people say, oh, I want to be on a publicly traded board. Well, that's a noble ambition, but make sure it's what you want. So really do the homework to understand what it takes to get there, because it may not be what you want.
If you and Marta, one thing that just resonated, hopefully, on the grit and what's currently happening right now in terms of our, economy, political system is someone that one of our members said they become like a sounding board for their staff, and they're from Venezuela, and they said, I've seen this movie play out. There's kind of this interesting perspective that now our community can bring to the current dynamic and leading to that resilience. And I've been there, done that. We've been able to really, and Marisol, you can maybe speak on this, but that's actually something that I thought, well, that's actually a great superpower at this point. If it's just for at least just making us feel like everything's going to be okay, then that is something that is super powerful. But I thought, in terms of the dynamic of what Latinos can bring to boards, there is a level of like calmness and just kind of understanding and maybe seeing the future in a way that maybe others don't see. But I do think it's tied to the grit, it's tied to resilience, just kind of what has been given to us in the various countries that we're from, that now we're bringing to the U.S. So it's something that really resonated to me in a story that one of our members shared.
Love it. Thank you. Carlos, same to you. Talk to us about the strengths our community should bring forward for boards.
I mean, whether you're Hispanic or not, right? You've got to have knowledge and expertise in something. What separates you from everybody else that's on that board? Because most boards are looking to say, okay, we need somebody with this profile, this experience, whether it's mergers and acquisitions, whether it's legal, whether it's whatever it is, right? So you have to be very good at something, right? That's your differentiator. That's what really starts boards and organizations looking at you. That's no different when you're working for a company or you're on the board, right? But on boards in particular, there's only so many. There's, I think, 11 seats, Aussie, maybe the average on a Fortune 500 board, right? So there's let's say 5,500 seats in the Fortune 500. That's it. 350 million people. You got 5,500 seats. Okay. Let's say you're competing with, I don't know, 10 million or whatever the number is. It's a very small number for you to break through, right? And it's still dominated not by Hispanics, it's by white males, and then white females, and then African Americans, and I don't know where we are, maybe Asians are ahead, I don't know, whatever. My point is, like, all these things are stacking against you. Martha said it right. We have all this stuff that we bring with us just naturally, who we are. Some of us have come to this country. We had to leave our country. We had to start from scratch. We didn't come here understanding English is not my first language, right? Spanish is my first language. But that's all built into us. We want to be helpful to people. I just say, look, you have to think about it as what is your added value, as Martha said, to not only anything you do in life. What value am I adding? All right, bring to that. And then, yes, I have other things that I can bring that nobody else knows. But you have to have value. If I hear that all the time, well, I'd love to be on a corporate board. Why? And they're like, oh, I don't know. We all answer the why. Whether it's nonprofit or not, answer the why. And in that answer, it better be about value. It better be about contribution to the organization. You will get much. You will get a lot back. But it really is, what is that value that you're going to bring to whatever organization that you choose to give your time, talent, and treasure to. If you can't answer that question, you're definitely not ready for certainly a corporate board, maybe a nonprofit, because the rules are a little different. But you have to understand your why. What is my value that I bring to this organization? Again, whether you're Latino or not, doesn't matter. That's what they're going to be judging you on.
Yeah, thank you. I love that. Putting that thought into understand the why, the purpose, and what you plan to bring to the table. Marisol, I'm going to go to you. Next question. What are some of the watch outs or the risks we should be aware of, and how do we navigate those types of things?
I think that there's a lot of perceptions that are negative out there against some of the minorities, and we need to be aware that those perceptions are reality. So that's kind of a risk in the sense of I think that we are being looked at even with a harder metric than some of the other people that we are sitting in the boardroom with. So to that, we need to prepare better. We need to make sure that we know our superpower and how that superpower is actually adding value to that particular board. So it takes harder work, which we know, as you all have said. We have that skill, so therefore, but we actually do that. We prepare ourselves. Every time that I go to a board meeting, I look at the agenda and I immediately start preparing and making sure that I am, covering and checking every single thing that may have an implication for that particular agenda that I'm looking into. So preparing ourselves so that we can counteract those perceptions that are there, I think it's an important thing. Another risk, and we talked about it at the beginning, we need to be assertive in this career journey. And I think, Carlos, you mentioned that it's a career path, and also there's a board career path as well. You start as a board member, then you may be getting into a committee and you are a committee member. Then you can be named the chair of that particular committee, or you can be named the lead director or the chairman of that board. All of those steps is like a career progression as well. And one of the things is that, as I said, they're not going to be there because of perceptions. It may be that they're not going to be there to offer it to you. But we need to know our worth, and we need to be assertive in asking for that progression as well. And chances are that you're going to be given those roles. And then it's up to us to prepare ourselves better and to be able to do that role better than anybody else, so that then we can be given an additional responsibility within the governance space. So those to me are a risk, because if you do and you don't prepare yourself, then it's a little bit of a disaster. Because as I said, I think the metrics sometimes get listed. like we're measured with a harder metric. So it's a huge responsibility to be able to ask for something and be able to deliver extraordinarily well on that.
But Marisol, and I'm interrupt. I think that, to me, that's like fuel to the fire, right? If you're, please underestimate me because I'm going to blow you out of the water because I'm always having to be better than everybody else. Better means though I'm more prepared. I know my stuff. I walked in there and I can discuss, that agenda because I'm very prepared because I know I have to. It pushes you to be better. And so I look at it as, that's a good challenge, right?
Oh, we did.
It's a negative stereotype that we're getting. Now I'm going to prove you wrong, right? Now I'm going to prove you wrong. And so, yeah, we always have to work a little harder, but that's okay. The harder we work, the better we get. And I think the harder we work, the more opportunities that come our way. Because there are people I'm not going to name names, but there's lots of board members that, just show up through the book and they're not working very hard. And so when you've got somebody who everybody sees, they know their stuff, they're working super hard. That's who you want on my committee. That's who I want as a lead director. You get along, right? So I think, being pushed to do more because you have to, because of perceptions, take it on, address it, and, just go for it.
But also we need to consider that responsibility that we have for the other Latinos that are coming behind us. Because if we do a poor job, we're not only hurting ourselves personally, we're hurting all of the ones that are coming behind us because we're fueling that perception that, oh, this person wasn't that good. It wasn't, making a good contribution. So yeah, it's kind of harder on us, but I think it's a good challenge to have.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Refugio, as I said, it's not an easy job.
Yeah, you know what resonated with me? I heard three things. I wrote them down here. I heard take ownership, set the tone, and deliver results. Right. I think if you kind of rinse and repeat that, you're gonna be in a good spot.
Value.
Value.
Absolutely.
All the time.
Last thing. As we wrap up, I know we're way beyond time here, but I just want to do one last thing. And Ozzy, I'll start with you on this one. What's one final thought you'd like to leave with the audience on this topic?
Yeah, absolutely. I have the honor, when I say that a lot, because I do feel very honored to be in this role and to do this work that we do and see what works and doesn't work. And it's very simple. For us to be able to continue to advance our communities, we need to know where our community is and be a support to them. So I have one ask to anyone that's on this session is to take the opportunity to influence the pipeline. I say that to our members every single day. Whenever you have someone that is asking for ideas for an executive role, a manager role, a board opportunity, the best thing that we can do for our community is recommend others so that we can influence the pipeline. Because today, there's a lot of biases and issues that we have in terms of influencing the pipeline. And I think it's important for us as leaders in any area that we are to take that responsibility to influence the pipeline. So for our members and for those who are on boards, whoever's listening, and even the C-suite, if there's an opportunity that comes your way and you're not interested, you're conflicted, whatever the issue is, lean on your network to find out who 2 to 3 other individuals you can recommend to that search firm or to whoever's reaching out to you. That's the way that we can influence a pipeline. So that's my final take, and that's what I've seen works. And thank you, Refugio, for this opportunity.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I love that, right? Keep expanding, keep influencing the pipeline, keep growing it. That's exactly what we need to be doing. Marisol, last thoughts.
To me, is to do that self-reflection on, am I good for a board career? What do I have to do to get there so that I can do a good job? And if the answer to those 2 questions is yes, then prepare yourself and go after it, because it's hard work, and you need to have your heart into it. So the intellect, I think people have it, but your heart needs to be in it too.
Love it. Thank you. Carlos.
Yeah, and this applies probably just in life in general. You're in charge of your career. It's not HR. It's not anybody else. You set the pace. You set where you want to go. You set your goals and objectives. So never forget that. Number 2, with regards to boards, be an expert on something so that people will say, oh, we need somebody with M&A. I know who to call. because it's all about relationships on those boards. So be an expert, right? That's your value add. That's your differentiator from what other people, and in a good way, that are bringing to the board. I would tell you this: as Latinos, expand the network. Go to places where you may be the only one, where there's few of us, right? And that's where, to Ozzy's point, that's where you influence the pipeline, right? Marisol said it. When you go there, be prepared though, because they're looking at you, and you're the only. You may be the only one they know. If they like what they see, they'll let others in. That's the way it works, right? And then the last thing I think sometimes we have a challenge with as Latinos is when you get invited somewhere, and you think, oh, I don't know if I can go. I don't belong there. You belong. You've been asked. You know, it goes back to when I was at Ford. They tapped me for a job. I didn't think I was ready. And I said that to my manager. And they said, no, you're ready. What you don't know, you'll learn on the job, but you are ready. We wouldn't have asked you if you weren't ready. If we thought you couldn't do the job, we never would have asked. So if you get asked to do something, you get invited to be in a room that you maybe not sure you belong, you do. Show up.
And Carlos, I apologize. I'm going to go, and I don't apologize actually, but let me go a little bit deeper because I think this is important. Talk to us about the importance of learning agility and problem solving as it relates to what you just said.
Yeah, I mean, again, as Latinos, that's like a built-in gene for us, man. We deal with adversity all the time, right? Every day there's something new that's being thrown our way. And so, you know, again, I'll go back to Marta's point. I always look at other people and how they got to where they are, right? That's important. What got them to that place? Because the further you go up corporate America, the less there is. If there's only one CEO, there's only one board chair, right? So understand whether the reality is who you want to be. If you want to be a CMO, pick the 5 top CMOs that you think are the greatest, track their career, figure out what they did, right? Mm-hmm. We all know there's an astronaut, Latino astronaut. It took him 11 times to get to space. Okay, 11 times, because they would come back to him and say, oh, you don't know Russian. He learned Russian. Oh, you don't know how to scuba dive. You learn how to do that. Be persistent. You'll learn it, okay? And just understand, you got to be agile. I mean, this is a game. You got to be quick on your feet. And I think there's a gene that we have, and we have a different advantage. And so that's helpful to us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And I actually have one more question. I just thought of it. I can't believe I didn't put it in my questions. I'm going to go to Ozzy and Marta on this one. Mm-hmm. And Ozzy, I'm going to start with you. Sorry, I'm just throwing in sinks. I think it's a really critical one. How do you even approach a board that you're interested in being on that board?
Oh, that's a very loaded question because it depends.
Do you have an hour?
Give us at least some rules of the road or something to think about.
So I'll give you my search firm kind of like talent side. So there has been strategies that people have recommended. Say, hey, pull your list of companies that you wanna, you believe you would provide value for, and try to network through. Mm-hmm. It's really difficult. It really is. Like, even if there's a board member that's retiring, they probably have a backup ready to go. It depends on what level they are in terms of the size of company. So it's not a foolproof and not a strategy that I recommend. It is more focused on finding the networks that will get you closer to understanding, for us, governance and being in that peer network. So that in the space that I work in, we have LCDA, of course. We have a lot of peer organizations like National Association of Corporate Directors, Private Directors Association, and others. 70% of board searches are done without a search firm. So it's who you know, who knows you. Mm-hmm. So you have to be present in those spaces to be known and to be remembered. That's a piece that people don't get, to be remembered. Mm-hmm. Because you can be cataloged any different way in a search firm database. It doesn't matter. Because at the end of the day, there's human element, which is whatever that partner who's leading that search or whoever, NAMGov chair remembers something about someone. And I see this over and over where you have to be relevant by making sure you're in those spaces. So whoever is thinking about this board journey from the not-for-profit perspective, there's probably organizations out there that allow you to get a better understanding of, where you can create impact. As Carlos mentioned earlier, your organization probably has a system or a program that allows you to get more connected not-for-profits. When it comes to the space that we're working in the for-profit and large private company, You have to be in those rooms to be remembered. That is the secret sauce. If you're not, you're just risking yourself to be, found in a database or someone remember, oh yeah, I might have sold. Oh yeah, that doesn't happen. There's a lot of human nature in this work that we do. You keep that in mind, it really will ensure that you are maximizing your time in the spaces that these organizations are creating, like LCDA. So that's one just trick that is really hard to do. But Marta, we love your insights.
We're all in the people business. And you have to remember that. What is it that you remember about people, and what makes them add value, and what makes them stand out, and what makes them, you think that they would be additive to your board? I think that's really important, because boards want to be around people, because they're spending a lot more time together these days. People that are going to make the board stronger, better, and a better governance body. So all those things combined are just so important. And if you think about how you're going to approach boards, gosh, I got to tell you, my board journey took a few years. It's not for the faint of heart. It takes time. It takes patience. And that's not what we have when we come from a C-suite. We don't have patience, but you have to, or you're going to be let down. And so, like I said earlier, it's a marathon, not a sprint. And if you think of it that way, you're probably going to be fine, and you'll get there.
Those are great insights. I'm glad that, we set, we're helping set expectations and getting that mindset right as we go for these things. But, if you do have more questions, connect with LCDA. They have all types of resources, or do your online research. But arm yourself, right? Get the tools, get the resources, get the info and mentors and sponsors to help you in your journey. Marta, to wrap us up, and I'll ask the speakers to stay on afterward, but to wrap us up, what are your final thoughts overall?
My final thoughts overall is being on a board is a privilege, and it's an honor, and it's a lot of work. And there's so much that goes into that. And we spent the last hour and a half talking about that. And I think as we move forward and we govern, not just for today, but for the future, we need to think about the role that Latinos play, not only in the workplace, on boards, and in public society in general. And so if we take that wider aperture view that Marisol was talking about and connect all the dots in that ecosystem, there's a role for us in many different places, not just on boards.
Love it. Panelists, thank you again. This was a very rich, deep educational experience. This was an experience for me. And for the audience, thank you for joining. I see a lot of comments here. I'll follow up with, replying to some of those. This will be out there for our entire community and, for the masses. It'll be on LinkedIn replay. It'll be on YouTube as well as my website. So this is a resource for everybody. For those of you who listened, didn't take all the notes, come back to this, right? Educate yourself, reach out to the various folks on here, make sure you're connecting. Again, a powerful thing to advance our community collectively. So thank you all very much. And we'll see you on our next webcast. Talk soon.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks. It was a pleasure. Bye-bye.
All right. We're